This week, bail reform became the hot debate at the center of New York's budget negotiations, and that's because of a 10-point safety plan from Governor Hochul called for changes to the policy. Her plan proposes to expand the number of crimes eligible for bail, give judges more discretion to order bail, and allow police to arrest people for minor repeat offenses. Now, she hopes this will be included in the state budget. That's causing a rift within her own party. Throwing a wrench into this debate is a new report from New York City Comptroller. It claims that further rollbacks to bail reform would primarily serve to extract more money from vulnerable communities, and there is no evidence bail reform rollbacks would lead to a reduction in crime. The findings back what supporters of bail reform have been saying all along. However, those who want to make changes to the policy point to the rising crime numbers. Overall, crime is up 45% in New York City. So this morning, I'm joined in studio by Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin for an exclusive one-on-one interview. Good to have you here, and good to have you here in studio.
It is great to be in studio. Thank you for having me as your first guest, I believe.
Yes, first guest back in person. So, Lieutenant Governor, I want to talk about this hot-button issue of bail reform, right? It's getting a lot of attention, this 10-point safety plan. Now, you, even as a state senator, have long advocated for bail reform.
Correct.
So why do you think changes need to be made at this specific point in time?
Sure. I think a couple things. One is, with every law, as the dynamics change, as conditions change, you should take a look at if there are tweaks that are necessary. And I'm one of the people who believe, alongside the governor, that there are tweaks that should be made. And we should be comprehensive, broader than that, as we deal with mental health issues, thinking about discovery issues in the courts, making sure that we are taking a real strong look at what are our gun laws writ large and how we should be sort of tweaking those. Again, these are tweaks so that we can keep people safe and strengthen bail reform. I believe a lot of what we're doing is going to strengthen bail reform.
So you were here on this very show in January when the debate was certainly raging on around bail reform, right? It's now the end of March, 2 weeks before, a week before the budget is due, and really in the middle of an election cycle. So what changed between January and between now that you're saying we have to take a look at it?
Well, we have been looking at it since then. I think what we're doing right now is actually working with the legislature to talk about some of the proposals that we have and how we come to a place where we can pass something in the budget that keeps New York safe and makes us safer going forward.
So the New York City Comptroller, we just laid it out, put that report out, saying rolling back bail reform would not make the city safer. It would instead really bring about some further injustices, especially within black and brown communities. Criminal justice advocates say that this will further hurt black and brown communities. How does your proposal with the tweaks prevent that from happening?
So one of the things, first of all, we are in the process of working with the legislature on what we will ultimately pass. Let me start with that. But one of the things that we're very concerned about as well is protecting the community. So the community also includes the victims. It also includes some of the small businesses that are really concerned about retail theft and some other very important issues that are happening. So I think we're trying to be comprehensive, have a fuller conversation, and use a scalpel-like approach. We are not trying to overhaul bail, rewrite bail. We're saying, let's talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing in the streets that are very real, challenges around mental health. And quite frankly, we believe that we should be investing much more money in pretrial services, investing in mental health beds, psychiatric beds, because we want to be comprehensive here. And there's no doubt that what we're seeing in the streets are troubling, and that there's a role for accountability around bail, but also significant investments, and that's what we're looking to do.
Yeah, and you and the governor had said you didn't want to debate this in public, and you didn't want to debate it in the press either. But then you did have an op-ed that came out in the Daily News, a joint op-ed. So it seemed like you were unveiling some of the details actually in the press.
And I think real quick, just one reason why we do that, we want to make sure that no one thinks that we're blaming bail reform, right? And I think unfortunately, we haven't done a good job historically of educating the community about what's in bail reform. So there's going to be some of that has to happen here. But there's no doubt that there's some tweaks that are necessary, as well as some key investments.
And I'm getting to that op-ed because members of the legislature that you said you are now negotiating with were saying they didn't hear about the details that were released, that were leaked in the New York Post, and until they actually read it in the paper. Could the communication perhaps been a little better with the legislature?
There's no question. We provided the plan. The original structure was that we'd have these internal conversations. Unfortunately, it got leaked. But once it did, We did everything we could to be as transparent as forward moving as possible. We did not want this to be a situation where this was just dropped in at the last minute. We have, over the course of 2 weeks, we have the time to have some very important conversations, and we will end up in a place that I believe makes New Yorkers safer, that protects all members of the community, the accused and those who are victims.
Yeah, could you see, and I appreciate the transparency in you even being here, but could you see how people might think it was dropped into the last minute because it came about 2 weeks before the budget's due?
I can see how people can consider that, but what I can say to you is we have been having conversations, and we are being as transparent as we can. This is a very important issue, and we want to take it very seriously.
On Friday morning, the chair of the GOP party, Nick Langworthy, filed a Freedom of Information request, and he's looking for correspondence between you and the governor and others about bail reform. You're included in that request. What do you think of this move by the GOP there, and what will actually come out of it?
I think the GOP is mainly focused on creating a scenario where they continue to scare and fearmonger. They assign issues to bail reform that are not tied to bail reform. They are particularly concerned about the election, and all they want to do is create more infighting within the Democratic Party to further their agenda. I've spent a lot of time with Latrice Walker over the last couple of days. I met with the Black Caucus, going again. We are consistently communicating with our colleagues in the legislature and the Assembly and the Senate, and we're going to come up with a plan that we can agree on that is going to make New Yorkers safer and will strengthen bail reform for the future.
And obviously, you were a state senator at some point. You know that this has to go through the Senate and the Assembly, and that's why you're having those negotiations. I know you want to keep a lot of it private. What can you tell us about the negotiations? How are they going at this point with a week left?
They are going well, in my view. We are talking. We're being candid with each other. That is what you would hope and expect. We're listening to each other. You know, Governor Kathy Hochul is a collaborator. She's a listener. She's asked me to be very active in those conversations on her behalf. We are listening. We're working together, and I believe we will be proud of the budget, the entire budget. Because remember, it's not just, penalties for active actions. It's also investing in gun violence prevention, right? We got to get to the root causes. Once a cop shows up to the scene, we're already late. Yeah. That's a reactive answer. What are we doing proactively? So we want to invest in gun violence prevention. We want to invest in affordable housing, supportive housing, so that we have real opportunities, people to have the support that they need. We want to invest in mental health. We want to invest in what's going to help deal with the root education. Yeah. And there's so much to do.
There's a lot.
And we're looking to do it while dealing with a couple of tweaks.
So help a New Yorker understand this, and I don't know if it's a silly question, but why does bail reform need to fall into the budget?
So one of the things that we have, that since I've been in the legislature, we deal with important policy matters that have a significant budgetary implication in the budget, right? And so because of the nature of the kinds of decisions that need to get made if we make any tweaks on these matters, it has budgetary ramifications. So, for example, we talk about mental health. Yeah. We want to figure out how we're going to deal with people who are on the street who need support so that they so that they don't be a harm to themselves or to others. Well, guess what? Part of that is we have to fund it. We have to fund the beds. We do that in the budget. So there's certain policy matters that have budget implications, and you need to be, if you're going to be credible about it, it's like how you deal with the issue of we don't want any more unfunded mandates. You don't. That's why if you have things you want to do that have budgetary implications, you do it right there.
So you're confident it'll pass?
I'm confident that we will have a solution that will make us more safe, and that's what the governor is calling for.
And lastly, because a priority, I know it falls into the budget, a priority for so many New Yorkers right now are these rising gas prices, right? There's been talk about lifting the gas tax. We're seeing in other parts of the country kind of play to help ease the burden on some of those folks' wallets. What can we expect from the budget, if anything?
We are discussing that and a number of other measures that we believe will help New Yorkers who are dealing with a lot of issues. Inflation is up, gas prices are up. We're worried about the pandemic. A lot of people are struggling because of that. So we want to make sure our budget touches on all of that. And, we'll do our best to have a budget that reflects the needs of New Yorkers.
And lastly, there's a lot of talk right now. It's an election year. There's a lot of talk about who the opponents may be in the race, and former Governor Cuomo jumping in. Any reaction to the latest polling that came out that we did that showed Governor Hochul, and if he does jump into the race, pretty much neck and neck in the race?
You know, I believe, and the governor believes, we do our job well. We get this budget passed. We protect New Yorkers. We make them safer. We create more opportunities where everyone has a seat at the table. The politics will follow. I think good government is good politics. I've always believed that, and the governor does as well. And so I think very strongly, let's do our job well, and we'll be okay.
Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin, it was great to have you here in person. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Happy
Thank
to
you
be here.
for being here. Really appreciate it.